Hello, Facebook Live. Lindsay Price here, resident playwright for Theatrefolk. Thanks for having my face in your feed. You know what to do if you don't want to have my face in your feed. So, what we're talking about tonight. Yes, it's night. I have my decaf tea and my not so comfy chair. But ready to sort of talk to you guys. And our question of the day for this Facebook Live is, how do you keep focused at rehearsal? And I think that this is something that is really an important thing to talk about, and it's an important thing to have an answer to. And if you have your own answers to this question, how do you keep focused at rehearsals? Throw them in underneath, throw them into the comments. It's something that we can all share. Your answers will definitely help someone else who might be struggling with that very same question right now. How do I keep my rehearsals focused? Because it all comes down to structure, doesn't it? So many times how many times has this happened to you when you've been in your classroom or you've been at rehearsal and someone walks in who is not a drama person, maybe they're an administrator, another teacher, and all they see is chaos. Everything happening at once, everybody in all different places. It looks like it's out of control because it's not like anything they've ever seen. If you are rehearsing and in your classroom, there may not be any desks. If you're on stage, you may be doing something where everyone is in a heightened state. You may be running a production classroom, for example, where you have this group over here doing one thing, this group over here doing another thing, and this group over here doing a completely different thing. And so it can look like chaos. And if you're not focused, it can actually turn into chaos. If you are dealing with a rehearsal where, let's say you are a middle school teacher and you have cast 50 kids in your production, that if they're not focused, it'll be one teacher, good friend Jessica says, like herding cats. Lots of herding of cats. And that's not what you want, right? You want to have focus. You want to have structure. And how can you make that happen? So I've put in our description, which is up here, I do believe, some blog posts that we have that talk about where you can find focus and structure for your rehearsals. So let's talk about them. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is one thing that can really help you bring focus into your rehearsals is questions, right? Where you are not just telling people what to do and where to move, but you are engaging your students in a conversation about a scene that's happening. So they're finding focus through engagement, right? And they're finding focus by being involved in the process. I think it's certainly not fair to say that students don't have a voice and that students don't have an opinion. Even middle school students. No, that everybody, that every student has an opinion on their character, on what's going on in their scene, and questions are so important, right? Rehearsals are all about exploration. And finding focus in a rehearsal through the engagement process and getting your students to think so that they're thinking about the play. They're thinking about their character. They're thinking about an answer to your question instead of, oh, I have this assignment. Oh, do kids go to the movies anymore? I don't go to the movies anymore. What's happening online. Oh, did you talk to so-and-so? That's where the focus in a rehearsal starts to This is the international symbol for fade away and float away, because students are not diving deep into the work that they have to do. So we've got this great blog post written by the amazing Craig Mason, 10 questions to ask in rehearsal, right? So there's questions like, choose one of your lines and say it with the opposite intention. So this is a great thing to do. If you're working with one scene and say you have students in another scene and you're going to work with them next, but you don't have anything for them just yet. So they need to be focused so that you can focus on this work over here. How many times has that happened to you in rehearsal where you are trying to focus on this scene here, but there's all kinds of noise and things happening in the back and chaos. So tell this group over here who you're going to see next, choose one of your lines, or do the scene, and as you go through the scene, choose a line and say it with the opposite intention. So for example, if the line is, I really want that rose. So say it with the subtext of, get that rose away from me, I never want to see it again. So then have them play with it. Maybe choose a couple of different lines. Keep saying it and keep saying or keep going through the scene and pick different people to choose a line and say it with the opposite intention. So that when you're done with this group, you can bring in your new group and now you've got a topic of a discussion. You've got a place to start. How did it work for you, right? How did going with an opposite intention of a line change the scene? Did it work? And if it didn't work, why do you think it did not work? And is there another line in another place where an opposite intention would work for? Get them thinking, get them focused on the work, and that will give your rehearsal focus. Another question. What part of your own physicality do you use for your character? And can you change it to something unique to your character? This is something that I talk about a lot with student actors, is that sometimes the physicality of a character for a student actor, that character tends to look an awful lot like them, right? So you have a teenager and maybe they're playing another teenager. You know, Jimmy is playing Bobby, and Bobby the character looks like Jimmy, walks like Jimmy, stands like Jimmy, moves his arms like Jimmy does. Jimmy does that thing where he sort of lifts his hand up aimlessly and slaps it back down on his thigh. So what we want is to get them to identify what is the part of your own physicality are you choosing to be your character. Choice is a really nice word, because a lot of times it isn't choice. They're just being themselves in this character. So start getting them to think about, focus on who their character is. Again, this is another great thing to have if you've got groups of students who you're not working with. Get them to, and if you have an assistant director, this would be a great discussion for your assistant director to lead. Get everyone to identify what part of your physicality, is it your shoulders? Is it the way that you kind of stand off on one hip? What about your physicality do you put into your character? And what part of this character does something physical that you don't do? Get them to create a walk. Maybe there's a really great exercise called enter, sit, leave. Very simple, right? Character enters a room, sits in a chair, something happens, and they have to leave. So have them prepare this nonverbal, very short physical piece where they have to enter in character, sit in a chair in character, and exit. Have them identify as they're doing this. Okay, so what part of your physicality are you using in this character? Now do it and show the part of this character who is physically not like you at all. And they'll find it very weird. And they'll find it strange. And that's okay, because now they're thinking. Now they're focused. Right? Okay, one more, and then I'm going to go on to another one. Opposites. Opposites are really wonderful. They're such a wonderful rehearsal tool and rehearsal technique. you know, the whole point of rehearsal is to explore, right? Okay. So choose a pivotal moment for your character in the scene. So that's the first thing. You're working with one student. Okay, you've got your scene. One, what is your pivotal moment? What's the choice you make in that pivotal moment? What would happen if you made the opposite choice? What would happen to your character? What would happen to what's going on in the scene with the relationships with other characters? So, get students thinking by asking them questions. And you want a focused rehearsal? This is one way that you can really get them to focus on them, what's happening with their character, maybe what's happening with their character physicality, what's happening with the choices they make, and maybe making opposite choices. So that is blog post number 1. 10 questions to ask during rehearsal. We're talking about how do you keep your rehearsal focused? If you have got a suggestion for how you keep rehearsals focused, throw that into the comments. That's something that is great to share with other folks. And I'm sharing my sharing. My sharing is some blog posts that we've got that are great reads and great resources. And all of the links to these specific posts are in the description, which for all I think is above me, but you know, could be below. No, I think it's above. Okay, so that is 10 questions to ask during rehearsal. So another thing where you'll find that students aren't focused is maybe it's because they've just been doing it too long. You know, sometimes your rehearsal periods last for months and months just because of the way that perhaps your certain schedule is set. Maybe you can only rehearse twice a week. Maybe you're in the snow belt and you know you've had snow days, and so it just feels like rehearsals are dragging on and on and on. And so when you get to that point where you've been rehearsing for a while, or maybe it's like 2 weeks before show and everybody is just like they've done the show for so much and so long that they get into a bit of a rut, and that's when focus can be lost, right? When you've just been doing everything so long, the focus is lost. So the next great blog post, also written by Craig Mason. Oh no, wonderful guy. And it's called Shake Up Rehearsal Routine, 5 exercises to take your production to the next level. Shake Up Rehearsal Routine, 5 exercises to take your production to the next level. Jeffrey, I love your point. Jeffrey's just talking about how to keep everyone focused is to change the overall tempo of the rehearsal. And I'm going to yes and exactly what you're saying, because that is what this particular blog post is all about. Here are easy techniques to change up the tempo of rehearsal, right? Get everyone focused by changing the tempo and doing something different. 1, role switch, right? Put everyone's name into a hat and recast the show totally at random and run scenes with the new cast. You know, don't worry about getting the blocking right. Just do it for fun. But this allows everyone to see the play from a completely different perspective and allows the actors to step outside their own roles. And it can really help actors sort of, you know, when they're seeing the world through another character's eyes, and also seeing how another actor does their role. That can sort of really jumpstart off the focus of a group. This is something that this is the exercise that I have one of the fondest memories of doing a show in university and being in that space where everyone was a little grumpy and a little grim about and not focused on what we needed to do. And this is exactly what we did. All the roles went in to a hat, and we got a completely different role. And it was fun. It was fun to try and play someone else's role and see what you would do with it and see what someone else would do with your role. And it just, it jump-started the focus. It was great. Okay, next one, an isolation run. So what you do is you spread everyone out everyone about the room. Tell them to close their eyes. If you're comfortable, you can turn the lights off, but you know your students and whether that would freak them out or they would do silly things. Let's not do that. So you can have them close their eyes. And then do a run of the show like this everybody's in isolation. And how does that affect communication? And how does that affect remembering their lines? And how does that affect relationships? Everything has to become laser focused when you can't rely on somebody else. When your eyes are, all your senses, the thing that they want to rely on most, which is their visuals, those are gone. And all you can do is just be focused. You can also play a little bit with this by having the cast whisper their lines. You have to be so focused if you are trying to listen for your cue line and that person is on the way on the other side of the room and they are whispering. Opposite, yeah, everyone has to yell their lines or sing their lines. It just is you're just trying to flip some switches and get everyone refocused. There's the Italian run, of course, where the cast stands or sits in a circle and you do a line run of the show as quickly as possible. So there's no pauses, no drama, no emotion. It's just speed. And it is a good thing to do later in stages of the rehearsal. And it is a great team building, right? Okay, we have to keep going. We have to keep going. Focus building, you have to be focused because everything has to go speedy, one after the other. And it's a help to really get actors thinking when they are struggling picking up their cues. Play ball is another line run variation where the cast stands in a circle and does a line run, and whatever character is speaking holds a rubber ball in their hand, and at the end of their line they have to toss the ball to the next speaker, so they have to know who says the next line. And you can actually add on to this by having the physical act of throwing the ball to mirror the emotional action in the line. So if the character is angry, they have to throw the ball with some intensity, all keeping in mind we must be safe. Let's not have people whipping balls at other people's heads. But if the character is loving, they have to toss it gently. If the character is young, maybe they roll the ball. If the character is teasing, maybe they just roll the ball kind of short of their scene partner. Put the physicality of the line into the ball. Lastly, opposites attract. Run various scenes of the show playing talked about opposites. So do a scene where you are doing the opposite intention of the whole scene. So play a comedy where as a very intense drama, play a drama for laughs. I think that is an excellent exercise when you have students who are working on a very intense drama. Take a scene and turn it to its opposite and play it as a comedy. Sometimes particularly with drama, it's really easy to play the drama for drama's sake, right? This is a sad scene, so ergo I must be sad. And that can be a mistake because it's not being honest to the character, because we do things, bizarre things in horrible situations all the time. We laugh inappropriately. We find things funny inappropriately. And sometimes when we're in the saddest of situations, the thing that we want least is to be sad. So there's a world of discovery in an exercise like this. This post is Shake Up Rehearsal Routine, 5 exercises to take your production to the next level. We've also got just because some things that you can sometimes, the reason that a rehearsal isn't focused is because you're doing everything, right? You are a do-it-all director. You know who you are. You're the ones who are, you have to deal with the costumes, and you're directing the show, and you're publicizing the show. And let's not forget, you're teaching your classes as well. You have to do everything. And maybe you are the only drama teacher in your entire school. There's no one else to lean on. It's all you. Is it any wonder why you're not focused in rehearsal and students aren't focused in rehearsal? So we've got a great 10 tips from Do It All directors. This is a post that was inspired from a podcast that featured 9 teachers from all over the U.S. in middle school and high school programs, all do-it-all directors. So all directors who were just giving tips on how they survive and how they find focus, and really great tips to go into your own productions, right? So the first is allowing students to develop responsibilities and grow your skills. If you are a do-it-all director, give a lot of responsibility to your students, right? When we're ready to move our show onto the stage from the shop, kids each have a specific task to do. And they've come up in the ranks and they've earned the responsibility. And that is a really important thing. You know, if you need to have focus in a rehearsal, student leaders, really relying on your student leaders. Having patience, right? Maybe you're not going to get it all done, and maybe things are going to take a little bit longer. That having patience, that's one way to go. Planning. If you want to have focused rehearsals, the planning starts way in advance. With Joanna Fellows here, she talked about how her season is picked by June of the previous year. So that means she's got the summer to plan what is going on. And a good friend, Lee Marshall, she talks about the small, and that when she's doing it all, she picks one thing in a show process and does it well. So one thing, lighting, for example, right? Just concentrate that on your production. So that means sound is probably going to go a little bit by the wayside. Costumes are going to go by the wayside. But lighting is the thing that she, for example, was concentrating on and making sure that was had her focus. And because she was focused on that one element, that it wasn't she wasn't scattered in all kinds of different directions. So that was just a couple. So that's 10 tips from Do It All directors. So you can find these links in the description. And lastly, by our wonderful blogger, Carrie Hishin. And this is producing a show, how great process will lead to a great product. And what she's talking about here in this post is that where is your focus is the question, right? Where is your focus? Is it on product? Is it on what is happening in those individual rehearsals? And the fact that if you're focusing on process and what's happening in those individual rehearsals, that a product must happen. It will happen. And about how when you're thinking about creating an effective process for your students, you know, keeping a notion of your focus. And how are you going to, if you're focused, how are you going to get your students to focus? Ensemble-based thinking creates, you know, a sense of fairness and equality. When, you know, the idea of focusing on the ensemble and downplaying the idea of stars. That when you are, what is the attitude that you are bringing to rehearsal? And if your attitude is about that you're scattered and that you're unfocused and going, you know, 12 different ways from Sunday, then that's something that your students are going to pick on, and they're going to be their attitude as well. So lots of wonderful tips, you know, and finally that this whole stuff is fun, right? Theater is fun. Theater is play. And when it stops being play and it stops being fun, that's another time when focus goes out the window, because maybe you and maybe your students want to be somewhere else. So when you can focus on the fun of it and the structure of it and the ensemble of it and the questioning of it and the thinking of it, that's when you're going to have a focused rehearsal and a focused process and a focused production. Okay, so that's it for me tonight. Thank you, those of you who watched and who gave me thumbs up and who did the hearts. Thank you for those of you who put your suggestions in the comments. And Briar, I also see your comment on projection. That is an excellent topic for the future. And everybody have a wonderful, wonderful night.